Hey guys, my name is Russell and welcome to For Chits and Giggles How To and Should I Play. In this video we'll be taking a look at the game Patchwork, a two-player tile placement game by Uwe Rosenberg. So in this game you and your opponent will be competing to try and create the most beautiful quilt board. Stay with me. Now in this game you'll be taking turns, taking patches in order to put on your quilt board to score points. And ultimately the person with the most victory points, aka the most beautiful quilt board, will be declared the winner. Now, without further ado, let's get set up.
First, each player chooses their colour and takes the quilt board and token of that colour. Place the time board in the middle of the table, then place your tokens onto the start space. Put the buttons into a common pile next to the time board, then each player takes 5 buttons from the supply to place next to their quilt board. Lay out the patch tiles in a circle around the time board, making sure they form a clear loop, and place the neutral token on the starting patch. Place the special patches on the relevant spots on the time board. Place the special tile on the table. Now you're ready to begin.
So now that we've set up, it's time to show you how to play the game. Now, in this game, you don't necessarily take one turn and then one turn and so on. That, whoever takes the next turn is determined by who has more time left on the time track. So in this example here, green will get to go next because they have more time left. In the case of, as you move your piece around, in the case of two players being on the same spot, whoever got to that spot last is the next player to go. So on each player's turn, they get a choice, one of two actions that they may take. The first action is simply to advance their token on the time board and gain some buttons. So if I was to take this action, you would simply move your token, and I'm being green, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 spaces until, as you can see, it is just one space in front of my opponent. But by doing that, I will gain a number of buttons. In this game, buttons are the currency from the bank equal to the number of spaces that I moved. So I would take 5 buttons from the bank and add it to my supply. But I'm not going to do that this turn. So I'm going to move that back there and explain what your other action is on your turn. That would simply be to take a patch, these pieces on the board, and then place it onto my quilt board. Now, to do this, there are 5 simple steps to follow. The first step is to choose a patch. Now, this neutral token, which always starts on this piece here, will dictate which 3 pieces I'm able to pick. And it's always 3 in front of the neutral token in clockwise order. So right now these 3 pieces are available. Once I've chosen my piece, and there are various advantages, disadvantages such as size, shape and cost for each of these pieces. Once I've chosen the piece, I will take it, put it aside for now, and then the second step, which is to move the neutral token. Now, when I move the neutral token, it always fills in the gap that has been created by the piece that I just purchased. So right now I put it there, and as you can see, this now changes the types of patches that are available to the next player. The third step on the turn is to pay for the patch. Now each patch on the board has a tag, and that tag has a cost, both in buttons and in time. But right now we're just going to focus on the button cost. So right now this patch I've chosen costs 1 button. I can afford that, which you should always consider before taking a patch. So I'll put that 1 button, pay it into the bank. Now, the fourth step is to place this patch onto my quilt board. It starts off empty, of course. When I choose to place the patch, there are a couple of things you need to think about. First of all, you cannot place the patch such that it goes off of the board, and secondly, you cannot place any 2 patches so that they overlap. So once you've picked a spot for your patch, you'll place it on, but be very careful, because whenever you place this, it is stuck there for the rest of the game and you cannot move it. So make sure you pick carefully, because that might mean another patch later on down the line cannot fit on the board. So it's always worth considering where to put it. After you've done that, the 5th and final step is to move your marker on the time board. This is done by the number of time that is cost on your patch. So this one costs me 3, so I would move 3 spaces onto the board. Now, that's not all there is to the game. Obviously, there's a little bit more to talk about. First of all, we have these special patches. Now, there are 5 special patches on the board, on the time board here, and they will be given in turn to the first player to pass each of them on the track. These are not considered a separate space, so the first player to actually go to the space past it will claim that as their reward. Now these special patches must be placed the moment that you get them, and these are simply 1 square patches. Very good for rectifying earlier mistakes or filling in those awkward gaps on the board. So once you've placed it, again, same rules apply, you cannot move it later on. So the other thing that you may have noticed on the board, there are these button symbols, but not only on the board, you also have them on the patches here. So what do these mean? Well, these are button income. And in this game, buttons are your currency, so the more of those you get, the better. So every time your marker on the time board passes one of these button income triggers, you will gain a number of buttons equal to the number of buttons on patches on your board. So in this instance, I would not get any, but if I was to buy patches with buttons on, the earlier I buy them, the better, because the more triggers I would pass, and every trigger I pass, I would gain that number of buttons. So that's something to consider as well. The final thing worth mentioning is the special tile. This is a reward for the first player to create a full and complete 7x7 square on your board. Now, as the boards are 9x9, there is a little bit of flexibility about where you create this 7x7 square, but once the first player creates it by placing patches down, they will immediately get this token. Now, this token is worth 7 points at the end of the game and not 7 buttons immediately usable as currency. So don't get your hopes up. If you're still lacking buttons, that's not going to solve your money problems. Other than that, that is essentially the game. The player at the end with the most points will be the winner, but scoring is a little bit tricky. First of all, you count up your buttons in your personal supply, the ones you have left at the end, and they will be converted into 1 point per button. But then you will get deducted points, -2 points for every gap on your board that is not covered by a patch. So if you're not being careful, or you've not been planning ahead that well, it is very, very possible that you will end up with a negative score. So that's how to play Patchwork, but the bigger question is, should you play Patchwork? And the answer is definitely yes. This is a great little 2-player game. It always is my choice of 2-player game, fairly recent as well. Not necessarily the classic Uwe Rosenberg kind of game, but you can definitely see his influence here in the fact that you can choose pieces that will specifically block your opponents from getting a piece that you know they want, and in later game that kind of does make a bigger impact. The puzzle mechanic is great, and not a lot of games use that these days. For example, Ubongo, Blockers, Fits, those are only the 3 I can think of the top of my head, but I really like the fact that you can plan out a strategy and then do everything in your power to make it work. It's quick, it's only about a sort of 30-minute game. Once you're a bit better, a bit less, maybe a bit longer if you're not so good, but there's still a lot of things to consider in this game. You do feel like a real sense of accomplishment when you win. Ultimately, I really do rate this game, and I think it's a good purchase, especially for those who aren't necessarily, attuned or knowledgeable of strategy games. It's a very easy way to start. So that's it. Thanks for watching. My name's Russell. If you have any comments or anything you think I've left out, please do comment below and we'll try and fix it. Other than that, thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next video.